A tenant is paying down my mortgage. They're buying me a free house. The property's going up in value.
If you're within 3 feet of me, we're probably talking about real estate, much to my family's chagrin. But here's the thing. Most people see 7% rates and freeze. I see opportunity. They're waiting for the perfect deal, and well, I've analyzed thousands of them, and perfect just doesn't exist. So I talk to operators across every asset class, flippers, multifamily syndicators, note investors, and whatever else is working. No sales pitches allowed, just real lessons from people actually doing it. I'm Ed Matthews, and this is Real Estate Underground. Greetings and salutations, Real Estate Undergrounders. It is Ed Matthews again with the Real Estate Underground. Thank you so much for listening to us and making us a part of your day. The comments that we get are really helpful, and it's actually one of the ways we found our guest today is one of her students had suggested that we talk with our guests, and I'm really excited to do that. Before I get into that, though, what I'd like to do is just ask you to, one of the things that's interesting is that 60 some odd percent of the folks that listen to our show actually don't subscribe or follow. And so while you're sitting here listening, and if you're getting value out of it, I would love for you to hit that follow button. So that helps us grow, and also send comments in because it helps us reach out to new people and also to understand what you folks are working on and how we might be able to support that with bringing in some really smart guests. So with that, I'm happy to introduce Melissa Nash of Lucky Lady Investments and a whole bunch of other stuff, which we're going to talk about. But Melissa, welcome to the show. Thanks for coming in.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me here.
Yeah. So for those folks who haven't discovered you yet, why don't you tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Yeah, definitely. So I'm a real estate investor, long-term and short-term, single family, buy and hold. So I'm all about just holding on to those bad boys, cash flowing when we can, and just long-term financial freedom, long-term wealth. It's really about building that financial security for the future. So that's what I do for my own portfolio. I'm also a real estate investment coach because, of course, when I first started investing, I live in California and I'm investing in states that are not California,
Good move.
you know? Yeah, 2,000 miles away. And so, of course, everybody's like, how are you doing that? I'm not flying out to these markets. I'm not hiring contractors. I mean, I have, and I've done that. And I've learned my lessons with that. And so it's more, people are like, how are you doing it? We want to do it too. And so I started helping people. And now I've helped over 2,000 investors actually buy passive rental properties.
Well, excellent. And congratulations and thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, this space can always use and very much needs highly qualified people to join the ranks. And what's interesting, I also mentor a whole bunch of people, and I get the question every once in a while, why are you doing this? Why are you telling us all the stuff that you tell us? And I tell them two things. I'm curious what your take is on this. I tell them really two things. One, it's a big world out there and there's plenty of deals for everybody, right? There's plenty of people that own property that need help and need a solution. And I'm a value add guy. There's plenty of those out there. The second thing is I'm 15 years ahead of you. You're not catching me. What you're working on, I was working on 15 years ago. And my job as a coach or mentor I always tell people we're all reading the same book. I'm learning from somebody who's on chapter 27. I'm on chapter 19 and you, my friend, are on chapter 5. I'm happy to help you, right? If I can help you not do some of the dumb stuff that I did, all the better, right?
Well, exactly. And that's kind of the same approach that I take is like, I look at Melissa, when I first started investing, it's been, about 11 years or so now. And
Yeah.
I look at where I was and like what I needed or what I wish I had, coupled with absolutely the mistakes that I've made. And honestly, my biggest mistake is not getting started sooner. I didn't start investing until I was in my 40s after a failed business. And so my goal is, I mean, I want to help younger people, but unfortunately, most of my clientele are, 30s, 40s, 50s. They're like, okay, I've done the W-2 thing. I want my time back. I want my freedom back. Help me do it. And which I love. I want to help those people. But gosh, I would love to help the 20-year-olds because can you imagine? Like, I wasn't investing back then, but if I had that head start where I would be now, I just can't even, it just blows my mind. I try not to think about it. but so I would love to help even younger people, you know?
Yeah, control what you can control, right? And time travel is still not possible. They haven't figured out how to break the relativity. Here we are. Yeah,
Yep,
and I
exactly.
couldn't agree more. I think one of the things that I'm always trying to think about is, okay, so I started in my 40s as well. So you and I are in similar boats, although I'm pretty sure I'm older than you. But the fact is that what would, 28, 30, 32-year-old Ed or Melissa, what would we want to know so that I either A, didn't do the dumb deal that I did, or B, once I bought a good property, here are the 14 ways I screwed it up and how would I avoid those mistakes? And yeah, I couldn't agree more. So let's talk about your investing business first. It's interesting. You have a wide variety of assets within your portfolio. And so walk me through your thesis. How do you figure out if a property, whatever type of property that is, how do you figure out a property is something that's a good fit for you?
Yeah, definitely. Well, first of all, I'll kind of summarize and let you guys know that my goal is to be as lazy as possible. The least amount of work that I have to do on a deal. I've done the whole flipping thing, hiring contractors, managing rehabs. I've lost money, I've made money. I've done it all mostly out of state, and it's a second job. It really is a second job. So my goal is, how can I buy properties where I'm doing the least amount of work? And then within my portfolio, I have different strategies because I believe in diversification. Some of my properties will have more cash flow than others, and some of my properties have more appreciation than others. And so I that's probably the biggest thing is, and I didn't do this all at once. I didn't just all of a sudden do this. I bought my first property for cash flow. I bought my second property for cash flow. My first properties, I wanted to make sure that the cash flow was there, not only to put money in my pocket, but also to help sustain the properties. And then I've bought properties that are absolutely not cash flowing, but they have long-term appreciation. So my buy box is different because I have built in this diversity at this point. So sometimes I will analyze a property and I'm like, okay, market appreciation, where is this market going? Where are the jobs? What is the rental demand? And I may not look at the cash flow. So for example, I also look at a good deal, like how much is my down payment? I recently bought a property in Little Rock, and I'm all in on that property, like $10,000, because I knew a person, because this is what happens when you get in real estate. You meet people and you make connections and deals land on your lap. I only have $10,000 into the deal. It's a $190,000 property, fully renovated with a tenant, and my cash flow is like, I don't even know if it's $200 a month. Now, if you look at that, a cash on cash return, I'm only in it $10,000. So actually, that's a really high return. But when I look at my bank account, I'm not getting super excited about, whoopee, $200 a month.
Yeah.
However, this is a long-term thing. The tenant is paying down my mortgage. They're buying me a free house. The property's going up in value. So for me, that was the right decision for that property. That was a no-brainer. But normally on an average deal, I want to see at least year one, 10% cash on cash return. At least if I can hit right around there, it's a deal worth looking further into.
Right. Yeah, I agree. The one thing, and folks, what Melissa's talking about is PhD level investing, right? So this isn't where you start, mainly because one of the key mistakes that I made, and one of the key mistakes that I see a lot of new players make, is they want access to all the deals. I want all the multifamilies, all the single families. Yeah, I'll figure out if I'm going to flip it or rent it. I just want a deal. And that's a really hard conversation to have for a realtor or a wholesaler or someone that you're working with, because that's a big buy box, right? What Melissa's talking about is, and we're going to get into geographics in a minute, but is taking what the market gives you. And that's a different level of play. So anyway, Melissa, let's get back to you. So in terms of geography, you mentioned Arkansas. Little Rock is a great market. Where is your portfolio? Do you tend to concentrate geographically, or is that not an issue for you?
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
A motivated seller just filled out your web form.
If you call back within 5 minutes, you're nearly 4 times more likely to get that seller appointment. But delay your follow-up by even just 10 minutes? Forget it. You're toast. Ella Vista Connect calls that lead back in 60 seconds, qualifies them, and schedules your meeting. Find out how much slow follow-up is costing you. Free calculator at ellavista.com/underground.
I mean, I wasn't intending to buy in Little Rock. I'm already in 5 other markets.
Yep.
And I think 5 markets are enough for me. I wasn't necessarily intending to do that, but the deal came to me and I was like, "Hey, I can't pass this up." And also my strategy is I have local property managers that I've vetted out that do everything for me, and they're good quality property managers. And if they're not good, I'm gonna switch. I'm gonna go find another one pretty quickly. So that doesn't scare me. Probably in the beginning, it was a little bit nerve-wracking, like trusting somebody else. But at this point, they're my partner. They're doing all the work. I'm doing nothing. So what does it matter if I go to Little Rock or Memphis or Kansas City? The property manager does everything. I don't. So at the end of the day, I was like, yeah, it's a great deal. Let's go to Little Rock.
Okay, cool. So let's talk about vetting property managers then. What are the things that you need to know about a manager before you consider hiring them?
Yeah, so this is a great question because most people focus on what is your property management fee? What is your, lease up fee? And actually, those are the wrong questions to ask. I mean, you need to know that information because you're going to plug it into your pro forma, but that's actually that does nothing because I'm vetting them out as a business partner. I want to know, okay, your entire portfolio, that you're managing for investors. The property managers work for investors. So they've got the data. They've got the good stuff that we can ask them about that Zillow will never tell you. All these sites will never tell you this insider information. Ask them, what is your vacancy percentage for your portfolio? Like how many houses do you have sitting empty right now? That's a pretty big deal. That's going to tell you, if the property manager is doing a good job. And that doesn't mean that it's a bad market. It could be the property manager because you can ask 2 different property managers the same question. One of them might say, hey, we have 95% occupied houses, and the other one might say we have 50%. Well, if they're in the same market, one's a bad property manager. So that right there can help you filter things out. You can use the property manager for so much information that people don't. Like people assume, oh, I need a 3-bedroom, 2-bath. Like that's the go-to. Well, I have a 2-bedroom, 1-bath that's never been vacant because there isn't a lot of them. And there's a need for every type of housing. And so ask the property managers that. Like, how quickly does a 2-bedroom, 1-bath rent? Or, what is your what properties rent the fastest? Or, how many applications do you get on a property? Things like that. Get creative with your questions because they actually have the data.
Couldn't agree more. The other thing that I just thought of as you were going through your criteria, property managers are an excellent resource for acquisitions. One of the first things when I create a relationship with a property manager, one of the first questions I ask is, who is your most stressed out owner? And can I meet them? Because invariably, there is still a level of management, right? You're not managing the property, but you're absolutely managing the manager. And there are people that do that well, and there are people that struggle with it, in all honesty. And since I'm in the business of buying properties from landlords who aren't really good at their jobs, I want to meet those people, right? And if only to give them relief and buy their property off of them. But in some cases, they become friends. In some cases, I mentor them. In a lot of cases, I buy the property, right? And that is another way you can work with property managers. And you pay them a referral fee and take good care of them. And like you said, they're a business partner. So you want them to win too, because it becomes a rising tide that floats all boats.
Yeah. Well, and another thing that made me think of another example that I had is I hadn't even thought about this before. Ask your property managers and listen, don't drill a property manager when you haven't even worked with them yet. That is the worst that you can do to them. Just like pound them with like a list of like 100 things. I actually think that's a little bit rude because they're not making money from you yet. And so you got to build a relationship first, like kind of nurture it and kind of slowly pull out this kind of information. But One thing that one of my property managers in Birmingham did is I have a house that had been renovated. It was getting older, it had been renovated a while back, and there's some things that it needed, and they said, you should get a home warranty, on this house because there's gonna be some things that are gonna start breaking down, and that way you don't have to pay for it. We'll work with the warranty company if anything comes up. And I was like, "You know what? That's a really amazing thing because as you build your portfolio, you just get busy and busy and you forget how long I've owned a property or how old things are." And
Yep.
having a property manager know that for you was really cool. And so randomly enough, I bought a home warranty and there was some plumbing stuff and I had added septic stuff to the home warranty because you can buy a home warranty at any time. It doesn't just have to be right when you buy it. And that was one thing that I've never done before. And so guess what? I got all that work done for free. Thank you to my property manager. So, you can ask property managers questions like that, like, "Hey, what are you doing to help me as an investor save as much money as possible? Like, have you ever done anything for other," like just kind of get the conversation going and things like that might come up, or you can make recommendations to them because they're learning too.
Right.
It's definitely a team effort.
Without a doubt, without a doubt. And when you have now, are you buying houses that are turnkey, or do you consider buying houses that need a little love too, or properties, not necessarily houses?
So I started out buying turnkey. So the number one thing was who to trust, what markets, what the properties are, so that was my first step. And honestly, it was like investing with training wheels because, being 2,000 miles away, I would have never ever had the courage to do it unless everything was already done for me. And there has to be checks and balances along the way. There's proper ways to do. You can't just fall asleep on a turnkey deal because there are shady people out there, but there's really awesome people out there and really awesome teams that really do want to help you. And so that's what I've curated the last 10 years is building out really amazing teams that I can trust. And so, yeah, I started out with turnkey and then I started kind of getting involved in short-term rentals. And then we did some renovations on short-term rentals, kind of did the BRRRR thing, which was phenomenal. A lot of work. And then I started doing like flips and BRRRRs out of state. I did about 50 of those. And yeah, I lost money on a lot of those deals, trusting the wrong contractor. I mean, I was just like, this is a second job. I just created this whole other stress for myself. And I had to go back and go, why did I start real estate? What is the point of all of this? And for me, it was the time factor. It was I want my time back, but also I want to build this long-term financial freedom. I want to be able to retire in peace and not be stressed out. And so I was like, okay, what is going to get me to there? What is going to get me to that point? And for me, it came back around to what I said earlier is being lazy as possible, which mostly is turnkey now. So I'm back on buying really good turnkey deals and just trusting the right people and making the right connections, like that deal in Little Rock. I mean, I wouldn't have gotten that opportunity had I not already been building those relationships.
Right on, right on. The thing I try really hard to trust people, and I'm not always 100% good at that. But how do you tell the difference between someone, you're talking about buying properties 2,000 miles away, right? They're just in that exchange, there's an inherent risk. So how do you figure out, okay, do I have a good one or do I have somebody that's good at telling me what I want to hear? Like, how do you navigate that? Because it's not always
Yeah,
easy, right?
it's not. And so I've kind of developed a pretty good checklist and I keep on file data information on all these teams that I've worked with or that people have recommended to me. They'll come to me and be like, "Hey, Melissa, I've been buying properties from this team. They're really amazing." And so I haven't bought from all the teams that I've worked from, but I bought from a lot of them. And I keep a pretty good system of questionnaires like, who are you? How long have you been in business? What is a standard renovation? How much do you spend on a standard on a renovation? And what are your renovation standards? How old does the water heater have to be before you replace it? Are you pulling permits? All these types of questions, I have that built out and I keep it on file. And if I'm vetting somebody out to work with them, they have to fill that out, and if they can't fill it out, then, well, why? Why don't you want to fill it out? Like, what do you not want to tell me? Like,
Right.
you know what I mean? So I've got that. And then it's honestly just long-term relationship building, I have seen inspection reports from some of these teams that I've worked with for 10 years, from not only my own properties, but from my clients who I'm working with, because I'm helping them and introducing them to these same teams. And they're like, and I tell them all the time, I go, hey, send me an inspection report. If you want a second pair of eyes on it, like, I'm not an inspector, but I've seen a lot. I
You
can
know what you
definitely
know.
kind of, yeah, I can look for those red flags and kind of see, because sometimes you see something and you think it's a huge deal and it's actually not. It just sounds like it is. And because I've done so many renovations, I know what the costs are.
Right.
And so that's a big one is I see those inspection reports all the time. And so I know exactly what they're skipping or what they're missing or what they're doing extra. So that's probably the biggest thing is getting your eyes on previous inspection reports and then obviously ordering your own inspection report. Always, always, always order your own.
Right. Even if you're buying it as is, where is, you should inspect that property, if only to inform your construction when you take over and you onboard the property, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, couldn't agree more.
Exactly.
Couldn't agree
Yep.
more. So, where are you right now and where's your business going?
Great question. So my goal right now with my own personal portfolio is there's kind of a strategy where I've been in this buy phase, right? It's like, where's my next money coming from my next deal? What house has equity in it? Can I pull equity out of that house to buy more properties? Maybe I have a lazy property that I need to do a 1031 exchange and I need to move that into better performing properties. So I've always been kind of like I've been like just creative buy phase is kind of what I call it. And then you kind of get to the point where I'm like, okay, now what is my end game here? What is my strategy? And I'm just now maybe coming up to realize that, it would be nice to kind of settle my retirement a little bit more. Although now I'm saying this, but I love real estate so much. I don't know if I'll ever stop buying.
Same.
But the strategy is once you kind of have your properties, if you have like, let's just say you had 10 properties, you do the whole snowball payoff thing where, you take all of your cash flow and you dump it into mortgage number one, and then you own that one free and clear. And then it snowballs into the next one and the next one and the next one. So, I could do that. And that's what a lot of my clients actually want to do. That is their strategy. So I keep on saying I'm going to do that soon. I'm going to start snowballing and paying them all off because I have loans on all of them, which I love loans, by the way. I think it is the best. And this is why I struggle with it, is because I think that loans are the best friend to a real estate investor because I get to write off the interest and, all the things. But at some point, I am going to start that snowball payoff. I just haven't quite decided when.
That's okay. It's not a race. Yeah, a friend of mine once
No.
asked me not that long ago. He was asking, we were having dinner, and he's like, "When are you gonna retire?" And I'm like, "What do you mean? I have no intention. If I'm 85 and I'm buying one house a year, one multifamily a year, that's fine, right? But I see a deal. Every fiber of my being is I need to figure this out, right? How can we afford?
Yeah.
How can we figure out how to buy this property?" So I'm
Yep.
right there with you, my friend. Okay, so why don't we get into the final five? And I'm always interested in how people, successful leaders like yourself, how their brains work. And so I really want to know, you have built an impressive coaching business. You've helped thousands of people on that side of your business. You've built a portfolio that most people would love to have. And so you're very successful. And yet every Monday, and I think we were just talking about it a little bit, but I'm curious what's driving you. What gets you out of bed on Monday morning? What's that purpose thing that kind of what's the juice that gets you out of bed?
Good question. So first of all, I have ADHD. Like, I mean, I think most entrepreneurs, we are entrepreneurs.
It's
I think most
prerequisite.
entrepreneurs have ADHD.
Right.
In fact, I'm sitting in I got this new ADHD chair, and it actually allows me to sit cross-legged because I can't I have to move positions so many times. So
I have a
my
ball that I
my
fidget
brain
with all the time, right? Yeah, same.
yeah, so my brain can't stay stagnant for very long. So I'm always moving to new ideas or a new way of doing something or a new system. Oh my gosh, I love systems more than anything. And in fact, I'm always like, how is this going to be a better system, not just for me, but how is it gonna be a better system that I can help and give to my clients? Because whatever I create, they probably need it too.
Yeah.
So I Yeah, so I think honestly, it's still exciting to me. It's still there's always something new, whether it's again a property for myself or I'm helping another client buy properties. It's new, and I just love that new, fresh excitement. But at the end of the day, for me, it's financial freedom. I have this fear of retirement. Things are just so expensive now. I don't know where my kids are gonna be, how are they gonna afford to live, I want to set up myself and my kids for so they don't have to stress and worry about, you know, whatever it is, losing their job and being a paycheck away from living on the street, you know what I mean? Like, for me, it's all about that financial freedom.
Right on. Right on. Yeah, and you mentioned systems. One thing I'm curious about, and especially with an operator like yourself who has a lot of moving parts in her business. I'm curious about those systems. And when you talk about systems, I think about process checklists, which you've mentioned, but I also think about technology. I'm a recovering technology geek. I'm curious, how do you use systems and I assume and it's some form of enabling technology to run your business?
I am a big spreadsheet geek. Like, I love Excel. The first time I learned it, like, I was like, "This is amazing," because I hate doing math. I'm terrible about math. But I'm like, "I can do a formula for that," you know? And I love maybe it's my ADHD brain too, but I've always loved I can change the column and the color and the width and, like, like, I've always been obsessed. And so, I honestly that is it. I use Google Sheets, Excel. Literally, I mean, I am such a visual person. Again, not to keep talking about ADHD, but I think, like, the way that my brain works, I have, like, all like, my personal properties, I've a couple different spreadsheets, but my properties are literally laid out at the top of the spreadsheet, and then I've got all my columns, and I'm like, property manager, lender, how much is the rent, who is the renter, the key information that I might need at any given time is right there. And of course, when my loans get sold, because they get sold all the time, you have to go up there and update the loan on there. And then I've got, with my short-term rentals, it's like, who are my people and what am I paying for? Honestly, I just do that, and then I'll have links that track to a folder. So it's right on the spreadsheet. So I'll have a link that goes to a property folder for that property.
Perfect.
So if I need like insurance information quickly or whatever, there's the link right there. It has to be simple for me, and I've never seen a system more simple than an Excel sheet to me. I just haven't. So that's what I do.
Yeah, so it's something that everyone should take to heart. I am known to make things more complex than they need to be, and it's not a character asset, right? So keeping it simple is something that will keep your stress levels way lower than mine have been in the past. And then also keeping it simple allows you to scale because it's a lot it's a lot easier to scale when you have all those moving parts, as we were talking about, figured out and managed on one band of spreadsheets across the top of your desktop. That is so thank you for sharing that. So I'm also
Of
curious
course.
about mentors and the folks that have helped you along the way. And I know that it was a mentor of yours who actually introduced you to turnkey investing back in the day. And so I not necessarily that person, but I'm curious about the best advice you ever got and who gave it to you.
Well, I'll tell you the best advice that I never got was by watching what somebody else did. So my husband's grandmother, who I didn't know her very well because by the time I even started thinking, well, let me go back and say it like this. She was a real estate investor in Los Angeles in the 60s and 70s. She was a real estate agent, very rare. And she would take a commission from a real estate deal and she would buy a rental property. She would put her 20% down and buy a property. And she wasn't an investor. Like, if she was alive still today, she would never call herself an investor. In fact, most of my clients do not call themselves investors because they think of an investor as like this, like, multifamily giant skyscrapers. And, most people kind of think of that.
Right.
But anyways, she bought these rental properties and, she bought a couple duplexes here and there and different things. Well, her husband passed away in the 80s. Actually, no, late 70s, early 80s, somewhere in there. And she was able to live off of her rental income on her properties. I mean, she had a wonderful retirement. She had a fantastic retirement. She traveled the world and went on cruises and trips and, and so when I met her, she was rich grandma. And she never really wanted to talk about it. She didn't see it as like something like amazing. It was just something she did. And so I knew, okay, that's someday I'm going to own rental properties because she held them. She held them long term. She held them for 20 years before they really started paying off for her. And so I knew that rental properties can create long-term wealth. And so even though I didn't learn from her, I absolutely learned from her because of what I watched her do.
It's such an important story for you and for everybody to hear, in that it's, first off, time is your friend, but also having the foresight. You don't need to go out and buy that 50-unit building, right? A duplex right down the street or across the country, if that's a better fit for you, over the course of a decade, 2 decades, will A, get paid off, and B, will continue to appreciate. Because last time I checked, LA property was doing pretty well on terms of the appreciation thing. And
Just a little bit.
a little. And California in general, right? But also from a cash flow perspective, if you stay in line, even just stay in line with inflation, 2-3% increases every year over 20 years is good for your residents, because that gives you the capital to continue to invest in the house and keep it nice and clean and safe. And also it puts pretty good money in your pocket over the course of time as well. And then if you ever decide to sell and exchange or cash out, refinance, or whatever, or if your heirs sell and they get stepped up basis, but it works out very nicely. Let's just put it that way. So, okay. So that's a success, right? You had a very good person, a role model to model what you were doing. I'm curious about a decision that you've made, a mistake that you look back on and you go, man, and we all have them. And I fundamentally believe that you learn way more from your mistakes than you do from your successes. So I'm curious about a professional decision that you made that you're like, oh boy, I would love to have that one back. And what would you do different?
Well, first of all, I would get started sooner. Well, that's the biggest mistake. My very, very first property was after my husband and I were married. I mean, we're talking 25 years ago, because again, I had this rich grandma in my brain going, buy a rental property, you'll be fine. But I didn't actually know anything. Literally, I bought this property. We were living in Atlanta at the time, in Georgia. And I was like, I can go down and get a loan. They gave me 100% financing. In fact, I think they even paid for closing costs. It was like back in the wild, wild
Good
west
times.
where you could just do anything.
Good times.
And yeah, and I'm like, that's a no-brainer. I didn't know anything about property management. I didn't know I could hire a property manager. I didn't know how to run numbers. I didn't know how much the rents were. Like, I literally did nothing. I thought that all I had to do was buy the property. The renters would just come flocking and they'd be amazing. And I could just make up a rental number. I didn't run the numbers. I didn't account for taxes, insurance. I mean, nothing. Nothing. I just thought you buy it and that's enough. Obviously, I failed. I failed big time. And I think I honestly ended up, I think I had a renter that ended up just taking the property off my hands. We bought it. She bought it from me. Anyways, I lost money on it. Like, a terrible, terrible, terrible situation. I didn't start investing again for, 18 years, 17 years later. Like, you know what I mean? It scared me.
Yeah,
But the problem,
I get it.
yeah, the problem is that it's my own fault. The mistakes were 100% me. I had zero education. I had no business doing that with I mean, good for me for attempting, right?
You're
Because
right.
I keep saying that.
Shoot your shot.
But you got to kind of know a little bit. Like,
Yeah.
you got to kind of know how to run numbers, like what makes a deal good or bad. Like, you have to have some education. And I had zero, and I thought that was enough.
Yeah, I was a ready, fire, aim kind of guy myself. I hear you on that one. Hey, I admire you for taking that shot. I fundamentally believe that I always admire the people. Everybody falls down. I have a friend of mine that's in investing, the venture capitalist in Silicon Valley, and he always says, I don't want to deal with an entrepreneur until they've cycled, is his term. And cycling means you drove your company into a brick wall and it was a disaster. And then you got up, you dusted yourself off, and you went back to work, right? That cycle, that getting up part, is the part that 99% of the people don't do. They go do something else. And so kudos to you for getting back up on the horse proverbially, and because most people don't. All right. There's a bunch of lessons in there if you were listening. And if you didn't hear them, hit rewind and listen to that 3 minutes one more time, because that was gold. All right. I'm speaking of gold. I'm curious about how you take in information. Like, what's the book on your proverbial nightstand? Is it, whether you're an audio person or a hard copy person, or you go to conferences or what? How do you take in information, and specifically, who are you paying attention to these days from an author, creator type?
Yeah, for me, it's all about mindset at this point. That's what it's all about. I mean, I've kind of, we've kind of hinted on this a little bit, but I've picked my strategy. I know what my goals are at this point. I'm a long-term buy and hold investor, mostly single family. In fact, right now that's all. Maybe I'll do multifamily, but right now I just love the single family asset. I've, changed within that and gone to different markets and diversified, but I know what I'm doing at this point. I've done enough. I've put in the reps. I feel confident in what I'm doing. So now it's just mindset.
Right.
So, obviously I have to say Rich Dad Poor Dad, because even though I'm not reading it anymore, it is still a go-to book, because I'm always telling people about it. I'm like, you have to read it if you're thinking about it, because it changes your mindset. You're learning how money works. So first of all, when we learn how money works in this country, there's another book that I read. It's called The Creature from Jekyll Island. Phenomenal book. My mind was blown when I read that book. I was like, wait a minute, the Federal Reserve isn't ran by the federal government. It was just like so mind blown how the richest families in this country started, and how it works. And so your mind is blown open when you start to learn about, Robert Kiyosaki's four quadrants of, how to make money. Then you start going into like, okay, like, what is our money system? That was fascinating to me. And then after that, it was building my own personal strategy and doing. Then now it's honestly, it's the 4-hour work week. It's Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich. It's all positivity. And in fact, I have deleted anything from my social media that is not positive. I mean, I've deleted all politics. I've deleted everything. I've even deleted family and friends who I love. It's not that I don't love them. I need to have positivity. Right. I can't allow any fear mongering to go into what I am doing, what I'm building for myself and my clients. And I think my clients need that as well. I am the person that is going to create a bubble of positivity, and you can do this. And I'm my own, best cheerleader. And, so for me, it's anything that is positive and keeping my mind excited and moving forward.
So I love that. Yeah, it's somebody had given me advice a way back, and depends on the time span, but what he said was, be a producer of social media, not a consumer. He goes, you'll be a lot happier, and he's right. And I use social media to learn, like the AI, this whole AI wave. I'm absolutely fascinated by it. And I was joking about the fact that just when I thought I was out of technology, this stuff sucks me back in. In fact, I'm attending.
Are you AI? Am I talking to an AI right now?
No, I'm a human
Your
being.
AI
I can
twin is
assure you.
actually you.
But I was actually writing code for an AI before we started this interview. And as soon as we're done, I'm going to hop on the Tony Robbins and Dean Graziosi AI Summit that's happening in
Cool.
30 minutes. So
Yeah.
no, I'm absolutely fascinated by it. And it's interesting. One of the reasons that I'm joining that is a friend of mine is actually speaking. I'm pretty fired up for her. But the other part of it is, it's a whole bunch of smart people that know more than I do about this stuff. And so I couldn't agree with you more. Melissa, I've really enjoyed this conversation. Congratulations on the businesses that you've created. When you're not talking about real estate, what do you like to do for fun?
Well, right now we're knee deep in a remodel.
Oh, boy.
We just moved into a new house. We're empty nesters. Our youngest just went to college, and we're like, what do we want to do? And so we moved up to Central California on the coast, and we bought a cute little beach house, and you can see the paneling behind me, that will be going. But yeah, so it's been fun to kind of get into the whole, remodel stuff, design stuff. But honestly, real estate is my hobby. I'm embarrassed to admit it. We were watching an old home movie not that long ago. We transferred everything into digital. That was, the old stuff. And my son had the camera, and he was like, "Mom, what do you like to do for fun?" And my answer, and I'm kind of embarrassed about it, but I said, "Work." And I love to work, whether I'm helping a client or whether it's my own portfolio. Like, it brings me so much joy and passion. So I'm always like so embarrassed to admit it, but there it is. I love to work.
I actually think it's a blessing, right? The fact that it's one of those things that helps you get out of bed on Monday mornings. The fact that you love what you do, probably is certainly better for you, but it's also a lot better for your clients too, right? Because I can see it. The passion that you have for this business can't be faked. So Melissa, if people want to learn more about your coaching business or your investing business, what's the best way to reach you?
Yeah, thank you for asking that. I'm so excited. So I started a new community. It's over on School. You can find it if you go to hellomelissanash.com, and you'll see join community up at the top. I have a bunch of other links on there for freebies, but honestly, you're going to get way more freebies inside that community. My goal, I will admit, I don't know what I'm doing in there yet, but my goal is to bring so much value and knowledge and just excitement. Like, I want people to be like, "Hey, I just closed on a deal. Awesome. Tell us about the deal." I want it to be a space where people can learn, they can lurk. I have a lot of free stuff in there. I have a whole, free course in there, like how to look at the numbers on a pro forma. Just stuff like that. It's just basic stuff, but I also have like really cool stuff on markets and different things. So anyways, join the community. It is free. At some point, who knows, I might make it a paid thing. I haven't decided yet, but for now, all are welcome and it's free.
Awesome. Congratulations on that too. Melissa Nash, thank you so much for joining us. It was really a pleasure to speak with you.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, and I'll come back anytime. It was wonderful speaking with you as well.
Love that. Thanks. This has been the Real Estate Underground. Don't forget to subscribe. It helps us grow. Until next time, Undergrounders, remember your real estate journey begins with a simple step forward. Now get to it. Bye for now.